Hey, you! Come, gather around the campfire, and welcome to the party. This is Party Chat, a JRPG podcast where we talk about everything that we love in the world of JRPGs and other Eastern titles. I am your host, Cameron Hawkins, and with me, as always, is my party partner, Kevin Kenson. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing a lot better now that we have a Nintendo Direct out, and then another one soon. It's Nintendo Week right now.
It's Nintendo double week because next week we got even more. We just dropped an episode talking about kind of like our hopes and expectations, and predictions of the Switch 2. More specifically, kind of like what we might see at the Switch 2 presentation next week, and I think we I think there's some stuff to talk about, but like ultimately not a whole lot that we were kind of expecting potentially happening at the Switch 2 presentation was at this direct. But
Sure.
there were still some things to talk about, and I'm excited to break that down uh, with you. But before we get into that, we got to go through some housekeeping. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please go to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, give us a sub, give us a 5-star rating. It helps with exposure. It helps get our name out there. We'd really appreciate that. If you want to support us more directly financially, we have a Patreon where we have a bunch of different tiers that give different rewards depending on what tier you subscribe to, whether it be getting episodes, our weekly episodes, a day early. This is not a weekly episode. This is a special episode we're doing because there was a direct the day announced the day after we recorded a podcast, and we didn't want to hold it out till next week. Um, we have a monthly Q&A, which we are literally recording right after this podcast, where we answer any questions that our patrons give us. Um, and then there's also Campfire Catalog, which we are recording this Saturday, which is our like book club podcast, which we are doing on Chrono Trigger. So a lot of really cool stuff in the works right now. Even especially if you are a Patreon member. And yeah, we'd really appreciate it if you threw a couple of bucks our way. And then lastly, go to youtube.com/Kevin Kenson and give Kevin a sub so we can get him to 1 million subscribers before the end of the year. And now, what you've all been waiting for, the Nintendo Direct news. Uh, we want to talk about some direct game announcements that happened during this direct before we get into all of the games that were shown off. And when I mean all the games, I mean all the games that we feel relative to talk about.
Yeah,
So
that we care
we don't,
about.
yeah. We don't have like we don't have every single game that we're talking about. We have like the things that we think that will appeal to y'all, and some that kind of supersede that, and we're just like, nah, we just want to talk about how cool this game is. Um, so the first thing I want to talk about with you, Kevin, is the virtual game cards. Uh,
Yeah.
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 What is that?
I
What is that, Kevin?
God, I'm trying to remember who I saw make a post that was like, leave it to Nintendo to create a complex solution to something that's already been figured out by other companies. Um,
Yes.
Look, here's the thing. I don't it's funny because it's addressing a problem that I don't think everyone is aware of, in the sense of like a lot of people just have their Switch and it's their Switch, right? They're not worried about going between multiple systems, or they're not necessarily in like a family sharing situation, and that's really where this functionality comes in hand. Um, Basically, there are limitations to how digital games normally operate on a system. You normally have like a primary one, and so if another one's offline, or if another one is not your primary, you can't like play certain digital games offline, that kind of deal. So their solution to this is to now treat digital games like virtual game cards, where you basically say, hey, this game, I want it loaded on this Switch or on this Switch. And so that way, within a single account, you can be like, oh, this other Switch that maybe you hand to a kid, maybe it's just the one that you have that's always docked and you have another one that you use on the go for some reason. Whatever the logic is, if you have multiple Switches, there's a way to now delegate, like, this game goes on this system, this game goes on this system, which is kind of neat, I guess. Again, I really think the big thing here is like family sharing, right? Because that was even a thing they additionally dove into a little bit to clarify, where it's like, oh, you can also lend a game to people within your family plan. But there was also limitations on that. I think there's something where like the switches have to be connected to the same Wi-Fi network at some point, so that way they do like a handshake to be like, yes, these are both switches that we have. I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of interesting hoops to jump through because I just feel like that's always the case with Nintendo when they introduce stuff like this. Uh, I feel like this is a wait and actually see how it works in like full release. Like I think they gave us an idea of how it operates, but I feel like it's going to have headaches we're not fully anticipating just yet. But it's also a thing that again, like if you just have your main Switch, cool. This doesn't impact a large number of users.
Yeah, I don't remember how a family account is set up, but like depending on how it is, I could see it just reminds me kind of like how you can library share on a PS5 or a Xbox console where you basically like sign your account into another system and you make that system that isn't particularly the one you usually play on the main system so you and someone else can share libraries.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I'm just curious if like depending on how a family system is set up on the Switch, like can you get like 7 friends that have that buy their games digitally and they can just allocate their games out to other people? Granted you can only do it one at a time.
Yeah.
And
And I think there's time
but
limitations too. It was like 14 days or something. Like you can only lend it out for so long. And again, I think there's like a shared Wi-Fi handshake thing you have to do when you do that. Because I forget who it was, but I saw someone complaining about how they looked into it and they were like, oh, if my kid's at a friend's house and they want to borrow a game to play while they're over there, they can't do that because we're not in the same household at that moment. Like we don't
mm,
have the ability to like you have to be in the same physical location or at least connected to the same Wi-Fi. Is how I understand is like one of the limitations of it.
yeah, it makes sense, right? Because if not, people would just abuse that system to hell.
Sure.
But also like could it could have been cooler if they let that happen. But yeah, it's and with the 14-day thing, it's like it's not like it's like a one-time thing where just for clarification, like it's not like a one-time thing where like you can never give that game back out. It's just like making I think it's kind of more like a safeguard where it's like you give out this virtual game card so that someone else can play this copy of the game that you own, but then you forget, right? Or they forget.
Sure.
And it just makes it so that like nope, it automatically goes back so you don't have to worry about that. Which I think is cool.
Yeah, it's like how Nintendo Switch Online needs you to occasionally connect to the internet so it can go, "Oh, you do have an active subscription. Cool." Like it's basically a refresher. Like it's making sure you don't just like get a thing, sign off and then forever enjoy it infinitely away from limitations.
Yeah. But there's also one other solution to this. Just buy physical, baby.
As
Buy
long as
buy
we can.
physical. Yep.
As
Yep.
long as we can.
And then the other thing that Nintendo announced was a new app, which they've, dabbled in a little bit in the mobile space. But it's basically a news type app called Nintendo Today, where which is out now. You can download it now, and it just kind of gives you news updates on things. And like, it's cool. I'm kind of curious as to how it's going to be utilized more significantly in the future, I guess. Like, are you going to like are you using this to announce your directs now? Like, are
Oh,
you not going to
100%.
go on social like are
Well,
you not going to go on social media though to like do that too? Like I just feel like
I mean,
I just
look,
feel like it could be a bit more additive, I guess, to what how we already get Nintendo news, if that makes sense.
yeah. Well, I mean, first off, this exists because X is on fire, right? Like that's what this is. It's so that people have a direct line
Hmm.
to Nintendo updates that doesn't require a presence on a major social media platform where everyone's screaming at each other. Not that they're going to totally stop doing that, but 100% this is Nintendo trying to have more control over where they distribute their own information. So yeah, I think like
That makes
direct
sense.
date announcements. I think part of that is because it has a calendar built in. There's going to be, you know, a kind of like save the date reminder type thing where it's like, hey, this Nintendo Direct's coming up on this date at this time. Don't forget. I don't know if you tried this. At least on iOS, you can even set it up as a widget. So my like home screen right now has a Nintendo themed calendar with like what's going on Nintendo Today right now. So you can
Huh.
like check the articles. Yeah, it's very bare bones at the moment because obviously the only news story is the direct from today where they announced it. Um, One interesting thing about it, and I was thinking of actually doing a video on this because I feel like if they only use it as a news update source, yeah, it's going to be a very simple thing. But there's already tiny inklings of other stuff on it that I'm curious if they're going to actually lean into expanding. Because if you log into it right now and you select what games you care about, there's actually articles you can pull up where it's like, here's a profile on Shulk from Xenoblade. And here's a quick summary of the original Fire Emblem and when it released and like what the baseline story was. And like it's all very bare bones kind of surface level articles. It's nothing particularly in depth, but it'd be really cool if over time they have more content like that and expand on it, right? Like I'm almost picturing like this is a first party magazine that's just in digital app form now. If they expand that stuff, because there's like basically one article per game series right now, and that's it. And I'm very curious what cadence that's going to be updated on. Another thing about it that's kind of cool, but I want to riot is did you set it up the Nintendo
I
Today?
haven't yet. I
Okay,
haven't yet.
so
No.
one of the choices you make is picking a theme, and that theme stylizes the UI and like calendar design and like what characters show up in it and stuff. And right now, there's only 5 choices: Mario and Zelda, obviously. Like, there's no way those weren't going to be there. Splatoon, Pikmin, and I'm having a brain fart right now. What was the fifth one?
Kirby.
Not Kirby, not Kirby, and not Pokemon. Which yeah, Pokemon is always
Wow.
weird because Pokemon Company. Um, I gotta pull it up now because it's gonna bother me. But yeah, I can tell you this: Fire Emblem is not one of them, which surprised me a little bit considering it's like their biggest
Really?
mobile game. Yeah, I
Oh,
would have
no,
thought
no,
that
no.
of like any series.
I'm saying really, as in like I'm not surprised by that.
I'm surprised. Like I'm not surprised Splatoon beat it out. Pikmin surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, but Miyamoto, man,
Yeah,
Miyamoto's
that's
like,
fair.
nah, we need Pikmin
That's
in
fair.
there.
Yeah, Miyamoto. Okay,
As
hold on.
long as that man's like living and breathing, Pikmin is going to get way more love than
Yeah.
it currently does.
And then
Or
Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing's the other one, which also makes sense. Like that doesn't surprise me at all.
oh, Animal
Um,
Crossing. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah,
yeah,
like
and I'm sure there's the chance they might expand more of these later if they actually like care about this app. Like I'm very curious to see the support on this thing over time because yeah, you're right. Like it could very easily be like a bare bones direct coming up on this date. Enjoy, or they could actually like consistently release stuff on it, and that might be neat. If the music app is anything to go off of, they're probably not going to update it as much as I would actually like, but we'll see. They've promised their first big push is going to be after the Switch 2 event because it's going to be the new home of like where Switch 2 news is going to drop.
yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. I will look at that app eventually, but I just have not done it yet. Um, so yeah, so we're just gonna hop into the games, and the direct started out with an absolute banger. Dragon
Trio,
Quest One
really?
and Two, huh?
Oh,
Oh,
Trio,
oh yeah,
really?
yeah,
Just
yeah,
like
yeah.
3 games back to back where I was like, oh
Oh
hell
yeah,
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 oh
yeah.
hell yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, the first three announcements were for this podcast. That was for me and you for sure. But the first one was Dragon Quest One and Two HD 2D remake. Um, we, we finally actually got some gameplay showing off those games. The first game seemed pretty like by the books in the sense of like what you would expect from Dragon Quest, the original Dragon Quest, in that new updated art style. But Dragon Quest 2, we got a potential new party member. There's this like younger girl that shows up, and she seems really spunky. She seems to have like a lot of charisma, and we didn't get like a name or anything. We don't know like. So for the context of those who haven't played Dragon Quest 2, Dragon Quest 2, all the party members are of the bloodline of the hero of the first game, but they're of different like houses, if that makes sense. So they're very like they're blood related, but like loosely blood
Yeah,
related.
they're cousins, basically.
Yeah,
Far
yeah, yeah.
removed cousins. Yeah.
Far removed cousins. That's the best way to explain it. And so, you know, in the initial party, you had three people, but now there is a fourth one to round out the party, which is probably why they did it, right? This is like, oh, so we get someone in that fourth slot there. And yeah, we don't have a whole lot of new details yet. Outside of that, but she's in the updated promo art, or like, which is probably going to be the box art for the game, which is really exciting. And so yeah, I'm super excited. I think Dragon Quest 2 is really good. I feel like that Dragon Quest 2 and Final Fantasy 2 are kind of like the two like most looked down upon of their respective franchises. And I all like from go, I was like, I really like Dragon Quest 2. I like this concept. Like, granted, like, you know, you could argue that Fire Emblem has done something like this, and like even though this happened first, like it's just one of those things where I experienced it in Fire Emblem first, but I just like how like, oh, this is the way that they're actually executing this, I think is a lot more interesting. And so I'm excited about it. What are your thoughts, Kev?
I mean, yeah, I'm super excited about the new character. I like the idea that, you know, we are getting a little bit of content add similar to what happened with 3. I am curious if there's more to 1, because
Mhm.
not only did 1 look very by the book, we didn't really see very much of it. That trailer was like 20% Dragon Quest 1, and then the rest of it was 2. Like, they were just like, hey, here's what Dragon Quest 1 looks like. By the way, here's 2 and all this new stuff. And that might be because 1 is just going to be much more by the book, and there's like nothing excitingly new to show. Or maybe, you know, they kind of want to peter out what stuff they show for each game. Because I'm sure the fact that this one still says 2025, we don't have a locked in release date or even like order window just yet. There's going to be more marketing for this game. Like, this isn't the last we're seeing this. So I'm
Yeah.
curious what other updates they'll have to show over time. Because even the way they introduced that fourth character, right? It was a very tongue in cheek, like, they were trying to be coy a little bit in the presentation, but obviously we're hinting that it was a new character. They're like, oh, did you notice there's a new person at the end of that trailer? I wonder who that could be. Anyways, moving on. And it's like, okay, obviously we're getting a new party member or something to that extent. Yeah, it looks great. I'm excited. You know.
Yeah, I'm expecting the layout to be at this point not getting a 2025, and maybe like because they're going to show it again at the Switch 2. I don't think so. That
I don't think
doesn't
so.
check out to me. But I think that this is a game that's going to have a similar model as Dragon Quest 3, where we will probably, if Square is kind enough to invite us, uh let like have previews at SGF, or like around the events of SGF, like last year. That's like the first time people got to go hands on with Dragon Quest 3. And then it'll come out in November. I think that is what we'll probably get this time around as well.
Yeah,
Um
I think that
cuz
makes sense.
it seems like Dragon Quest 3 did well for them. And so like it wouldn't hurt for them to be like, let's just do the exact same thing with these two.
Yeah,
So,
and as we've kind of talked about too, the rest of this year is a little bit of we don't really know what Square Enix's plans are. We found out one more today, which we'll talk about in a bit. But that's also a shadow drop, so like that doesn't really fill out the schedule ahead anymore. DQ 1 and 2 is like the one big thing we know about. Um,
mhm.
so yeah, I would not be surprised at all if that ended up being like a November one as well.
And then the next game that was announced, which I don't think anyone expected,
No.
and we in particular are super excited about it, is we are getting a new AI Somnium Files game. And not only are we getting a new AI Somnium Files game, but Date is back. And I don't know about you, but I love Date.
Oh, I know, I love
Uh
Dante too. Yeah.
no, like it's one
For
of those
people
things
that
where
don't have context, Date is the main character of the first game. He's in the second
yes,
one, but as a supporting character, they shift focus to someone else. Uh,
yes.
but he's the original main character for the first one, and so this is a new game starring him once again. That looks, it seems a little bit like this one's more of a spin-off based on how they're positioning it a little bit. It's not really a 3 as much as it is like a side game.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I definitely want to dig into that a little bit. But I did want to say like the reason why I was mentioning like I really like Date is because like when we got the new character, and I honestly forgot her name right now. In Nirvana Initiative, uh, people were like, "Oh, this was like a much needed change because Date is kind of like uh problematic. He has like those like tropes of
Oh,
like a
he's the
you
lecherous
know
older guy. Yeah.
yeah exactly. Um, and so I like I found the game really funny. And so this initially when we saw this, I thought this was like an updated re-release of the first game because a lot of like the kind of stills that they were showing and like gameplay elements because it's like a visual novel slash adventure type game. You're going to a lot of the locations that you already know about if you've played the AI games, and so I'm like, wait a minute, is this like a updated re-release of the first game?
Yeah.
But no, apparently it is a new game. And Iris is missing. Such a great character. Um, and yeah, and it's coming out in on July 25th. I'm curious as to how involved the writer is because of 100 line.
So he actually did comment on this.
Okay.
There was a post on, I don't remember if it was Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever, but there was the post of announcing the game, and then his account replied, just being like, "Hey guys, just so you know, I didn't directly write on this one, but as series producer or series director, he had full oversight. He was, he looked at scripts, he saw what was being done. He ensures that it's being written by fans of the game that are making sure the legacy is being done right. Some of this is definitely kind of your standard PR talk for when like a lead writer has to be. I didn't actually write this one, but you hope that everything he's saying is completely ringing true and that the quality is still going to be there. So yeah, he is not directly writing this one. I believe he was engaged with 100 line at the time, but he did say that he at least had like feedback and communication and was involved with it.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. So yeah, if that mean if you take that as in like, oh, maybe have a bit more reservations on the writing compared to or the storytelling compared to the first two games, that makes sense. But I'm super excited for it. I can't wait to play it because we've talked about it a bit on the podcast already, but like I am really behind on a lot of like visual novel type adventure like games. Like I haven't played any of the Zero Escape series.
It's so good.
Um, I know I've only played Danganronpa 1. I haven't played 2 or V3. Um, so I do have some catching up to do in that field, but this is a day one for me for sure. Like I'm definitely going to play this straight away.
Yeah, immediately.
Uh, yep. Next off, the third really dope announcement is that we got Raidu remastered, the Mystery of the Soulless Army. So this is like, one of another the new port that Atlas is doing as they've been slowly but surely basically porting all of their like PS2 era titles
Which I
to
I can't believe we forgot about this when we're recording our last podcast because I even brought up like, oh, I feel like SMT is always being paired with Nintendo, so I wonder if they'd have any announcement of the Switch 2 thing. And it left my brain that like this leaked. Like we knew that this was probably in development. Like screens of this game leaked like a couple months back, I think. And here it is.
was it this game or was it I thought because I know that there was like the people were speculating when there was like some stuff regarding Digital Devil Saga on Steam
I
under the Nocturne
Yes, there was
stuff.
that for like titling, but I believe there was actually an image still for this one around the
Oh,
same time. Or maybe it
I
was
did
just
not see
titled for
that.
this one as well. I know Devil Summoner was specifically leaked at some point though.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, cool. I've never played this game and it's a game I wanted to play, but just like I never did because like I don't have a PS2 and
Yeah.
getting copies of a lot of these games are kind of hard to get now. So, yeah, I'm excited that's getting ported just like any other Atlas game and I will play it.
Yeah. I am a little surprised it's not a duology. I'm curious at what rate they're going to release the second one. If that's just like if they're waiting to see how well this one does, or if they're just like, it's already ready to go, it's midway through production, we're gonna drop it in, another year.
Yeah, I could see them just doing it, just releasing the second one later because something that's worth of note. This is only a $50 game. This
Yep.
isn't $60. So uh, I think that'll help kind of ease the approach, the like willing to purchase and check it out, compared to their more newer releases.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see.
Plus,
And then the release date is June 19th.
yeah, and the cover art for it goes really freaking hard. Have you seen the cover art for this game yet?
Yes, it's
Love it.
sick. Yeah. I don't like that this is coming out in June just because it's the same month as Death Stranding 2, but
Gonna have to make
I
your
will get
choices.
I will get to it eventually. I'll get another thing that I'm actually really excited about this game because I never really like looked into the gameplay of this game is that it's an action RPG. It's not a turn-based combat type game. So, I'm excited to see how that like plays out as with Atlas normally sticking to the turn base. So, next thing is Shadow Labyrinth, which is this Metroidvania inspired by Pac-Man that was announced I want to say at the Game Awards.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it
at
was
the Game Awards.
pre-show for Game Awards. I don't think it was like part of the main show, but during the lead up.
Yeah, and this is like very much based off of the episode of
I always forget.
oh my
Hidden level,
gosh.
next level,
Next level,
secret
Secret
level.
Level.
I knew it was something like that. Yeah.
Secret Level, and in my opinion, it was far and away the best one. Like far and away the best episode. And so like and just seeing the gameplay and how they're kind of utilizing the Pac-Man mechanics into it, it looks good. Like it's one of those things like on paper, it's like this has no right looking as good as it does, but it does.
Yeah. No, it's the weirdest thing to pitch. Like I've been in a couple of Discord servers today where people are like, "What do you mean Pac-Man Metroidvania?" Like
Yeah.
what are you describing to me right now? Like anyone typing up a summation of what this game is sounds like they're crazy. Like they hallucinated some game and it's like, "No, that's what this is." Like it's a dark astronaut Pac-Man game. Enjoy.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Like it's admittedly not a game that I'm going to prioritize playing. I don't know when I'm going to play this game, but it looks cool and I hope it ends up being good cuz then if it is, I will end up playing it eventually. But not anytime soon. But that it does drop on July 18th. So and I believe it's going to be like on everything. So you can, if you have a way to play video games, you should be able to play this game. Next up, probably probably the most unexpected announcement during this dur- actually well
Unexpected
it's what
applies to a lot of this show, to be honest.
yes, that's true, that's true, that's
Like
true.
there's so many
Unexpected,
out of nowhere things.
yeah, unexpected in the sense of like I'm just gonna talk about the story. I'm gonna talk about the story. So Patapon 1 and 2 are coming to Switch and is being published by Bandai Namco.
Yep.
So, because for those that don't know, Patapon is a Sony IP.
Yes.
And so Bandai seemingly made some sort of deal with Sony to be like, hey, we want to publish this on the Switch. And I guess like Sony is just like, hey, this is niche enough where they don't really care about having it on a console that isn't PlayStation. But
I
even then, like
I think
Lego Horizon Adventures was on
yeah.
the Switch.
Well, yeah, and well, Lego is that's also like a situation where I think Lego is involved a little bit with the decision where they're like, hey, like, why isn't this going on there? It's like how the PlayStation MLB games ended up going multi-plat before like any other PlayStation title, because MLB was
Mhm.
just like, no, like, sell more, like, bring in more money.
Yeah.
I think in the case of these ones, it's something where this is kind of a downer to say. I think it's that PlayStation doesn't really have any plans to leverage this IP in the near future.
Mhm.
And it's just like, look, the game's out there, it exists. It's not like they're making any extra money on sales of it right now, outside of people playing it via PlayStation Premium, the older versions. So, like, yeah, re-release it, like, make a remake and bring it to more places. And Switch is a perfect fit for it. I mean, this was a handheld game originally.
Yeah, it was a PSP game, correct?
Yes, and this is getting ahead of the list a little bit, but this isn't the only game at this direct that is a former PlayStation IP only. Everybody's Golf, we also saw at this direct today, and that's another one
Yeah.
that's being published by Bandai Namco, and it was originally PlayStation, but it's now ending up on Nintendo system. I think both these are actually like multi-platform. They're not just Switch, correct?
I actually don't know. I believe. Well, so Patapon 1 and 2 were remastered already. They were remastered and put out on PS4.
Yes.
Um, but the I'm just not familiar with Everybody's Golf Hot Shot, or like Everybody's Golf as an IP. I Hot Shots. I Is that a new game or is that a port of an old game?
It's a new game. Yeah, it's
Oh
part
yeah.
of
So
yeah.
if it's a new game, I see that being a on PlayStation, but it also makes me wonder why PlayStation just doesn't announce that at a state of play.
Don't know. Yeah, maybe they just didn't want to leverage it. Maybe, yeah. I'm really not sure on that one. Because both of them, because even the Patapon, this is a new remaster slash remake. Like, I think the one that happened before was really just like a cleanup upscale of the PSP game brought to PlayStation 4. This is like an
Hmm.
actual, like, they redid stuff and it's like a fresh coat of paint a bit, you know?
Yeah, so it looks like for this, Everybody's Golf is coming to PS5, Switch, and Steam. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that actually does make sense if this is the case. Bandai Namco just might be publishing it, period.
Yeah,
And so, like, if they're publishing it, period, Sony's like, oh, we don't really need this in our state of play, even though it's our IP, which is
sure.
kind of weird still, but, the logic is there.
Yeah, there's a
So,
darker part of my brain where it's like these are both kind of more fun, wacky era PlayStation, and it doesn't fit the current vibe of third-person action cinematic game that they've been leaning more and more into. But
yeah.
that's just me being a cynic. So
No, like, I think that's a valid take. I think it's a valid assessment. So yeah, I haven't played Patapon, and it's a series that I've wanted to get into, and like seeing the actual gameplay of it all,
pun, 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 pun.
it it really did itch my brain. I'm like, oh, this looks like my type of game. This looks like
I,
my type of shit.
the description I was giving to a lot of this direct this morning was just saying that like this is a lot of very specific games. And what I
Yes.
mean is that these are games that there's not really any other franchise that does exactly what they do unless the intent is to copy them. Like I think there is a Patapon spiritual successor actually on the way. But there's not really any other like there's not really a game out there that does this rhythm strategy 2D like it's just such a very specific unique game and that applies to a bunch of stuff that was at this direct today. Um it's like these aren't necessarily like console sellers, these aren't going to be the hype inducers, but there are fans that are just ravenous for these very specific titles, and it's like, yes, thank you.
Yes, yeah. It's a lot of very niche thing. Like again, like I called this was the direct for JRPG, management sim, and music game fans featuring Metroid Prime 4. Like that is what this direct encapsulates. Um but yeah, so that is coming out in July. I believe July 10th is the release date for that, according to the Steam page. So
I think
that's cool.
it might technically be the 11th, but it always gets listed a day before because it's like 9 p.m. Steam.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. July 11th. Um, the next game, if my computer did not want to freeze on me right now,
I got you. I
I
got
would.
you. It's a
Yeah,
story of
what do we got?
seasons.
Story
Grand
of
Bazaar.
Seasons. Yes. I'm not a Story of Seasons guy. I'm not a management sim guy. I'm happy for Story of Seasons fans. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I look. I while I'm not personally excited, there's two things I do want to talk about real quick with this being part of the direct. One, it had to happen. This is the final original Switch focused direct. You know, we're kind of entering a new era starting next month when we get the Switch 2 direct. And it's like, for old time's sake, man, we had to get a farming sim in there. Like, it's just not, it would not be a direct without it. But two, I always love dropping this because it's common knowledge to people that are into this, but I always feel like it's worth shouting out. If you're not aware, Story of Seasons is actually Harvest Moon. Like, if you like old Harvest Moon, you want to pick up Story of Seasons. Uh, you do not want to keep up with what is being currently called Harvest Moon, because that is an entirely different game where basically the publisher kept the IP name rights after they changed. And so it's like, oh, well, we're going to make our own Harvest Moon games then. And they're not the same. They're not as good. Story of Seasons is like the actual Harvest Moon franchise. They just had to change names because legal name right things are fun. So, yeah, knowledge is power.
Yeah, I feel like I heard that before, but thank you for giving everyone the refresher on that. Next up, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Kevin, take this one away.
Psychic powers.
And can I
let's go.
say, can I
What?
just say really quick? I don't think those psychic powers looked really good.
They look fine. What I'm more curious about is because like the Metroid timeline's a little all over the place. Like different game, like the games aren't really being released fully in sequential order. So I can't wait for the logic of the end of the game where they go, and then she lost those powers. Like it's just like it's only relevant to this game probably, or it's going to come up in more Prime titles and then it disappears later. I don't know. Yeah, like they look fine. I mean, it just looks like they wanted to have a new thing for interacting with the environment and like having a new puzzle mechanic outside of you need missiles to blow this up. Like they needed a new thing, right? And this is the new thing. What I will say was funny to me about this trailer is I love how they did the timing of we get to the title card at the end and it still just says 2025 taunting us because everyone was thinking, you know, either today or at the next direct we were going to get a release date for this and we didn't. And then as kind of like but here have this, they immediately cut to a new armor suit reveal as like a teaser, just to be like, look, we can't give you a release date yet, but like this shit looks cool though, huh? Yeah, I bet you like that.
The thing that's so funny, I have two things to say. The thing that's so funny about like when Nintendo presents first party games is just how they're not afraid to just hard cut gameplay.
Yeah.
Like they don't care about editing. They're just like, nah, we're done showing you, and then it just like fades out like mid thing. I'm like, wait, what? But on top of that, I knew it was a long shot, but I was really hoping Prime 2 and 3 like day and date drop today.
Yeah.
Alongside that.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? If it's still just saying 2025, who knows when we're getting this thing? There's a whole, you know, if this ends up what?
You don't think they're waiting until just next week?
No, I mean I've talked about this. I'm a doubter. I don't think it's cross-gen. I think it's a Switch 1 game. Yeah, no, I see the case I know it's not a popular stance. That's just my
I know that you think that, but I mean,
why have it here then?
What do you think is more likely? You know, like because the thing is like if there was if it isn't going to be on the Switch 2 and they're not going to show anything this week, I think at this point they would have given us a release window or a release or you know something because the thing is like Nintendo doesn't like showing their games off until they are almost done with them.
Right, except this is a game they announced 8 years ago and they've been needing to give people breadcrumbs because oh god, please, is it actually releasing finally?
I don't think so. I don't think that's like
I don't know. I personally don't think anything that showed up at today's direct is going to show up next week.
Oh, I agree with that.
Right, which includes Metroid Prime 4.
Well, no, everything but Metroid Prime. Everything but Metroid Prime. Because I think they use this time to show off the game, and then they're going to be like, there's definitely going to be a segment where they're going to show every launch title, first party launch title that's coming to the Switch. And Metroid Prime's definitely going to be on that list.
Yeah, I'm a hater. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm a doubter on this. I'm a doubter on this one. That's all.
We don't have the time to do it.
Yeah.
Or maybe we can try and do it while we're talking about other stuff if we're really good multitaskers. But I think we need to reflect back on the history of Nintendo launch titles and see like how like good or bad they have been.
Oh, sure.
Or like how many first party first parties there have been at launch. But like I just can't see I can't just see it being just Mario Kart. I just can't.
Oh, I don't think it's
Like,
gonna
I
be just
know.
Mario Kart either. Yeah.
Well, what else do you think that there's gonna be?
I'm okay. This is a whole. We had this conversation literally yesterday.
I
We
know, I know, but
like we talked about Fire Emblem remake possibilities. We talked about a Mario 3D. There's probably going to be other side content spin-off stuff. Like I think there's
I
plenty of things that can happen outside of Metroid Prime 2 or 4.
I think that those things will happen in the first year of the Switch. I do not think that those things will happen as a launch title.
I
Metroid Prime 4
I
makes
just don't
sense.
see it. It has been in development for so long for the original Switch, and it's not a
Mhm.
console mover. I'm sorry. It has its fans, but that's not. Have you seen the Metroid shelf at a Nintendo store? It is an end cap if it exists at all. Like, I
I
love me
agree
some
with you.
Metroid, but it's not a console seller. It's
I
not going to
agree
be the push.
I agree with you, but it's also one of those things where it's like, hey, like I got this new console, I want some games to play. Yes, there's Mario Kart, but what else is there? And because Metroid is a a more niche first party, I think that will help drive sales for that game. That's what I think.
Sure,
But also, like,
in my mind, it has maybe an unlocked frame rate for Switch 2. Like, I don't see it being a like cross-gen to native versions personally.
okay, that I'm not gonna go as far as to like fight back on
And we'll
that.
find out. Like, this is the ultimate. Like, I,
Yeah, yeah,
I
we'll
know
find
I'm
out
being
in
a
a week.
hater. I know I'm doubting because your theory is definitely the popular one. Like, that has been the assumption from a lot of people. And I've been kind of in my corner, like, no, I don't think that's what's going to happen. And we'll find out.
No, no. Just bonking heads.
Yeah.
No.
Stop it. I think it's like me and oh God, I can't remember his name right now. Why am I having a brain fart? There's like one other guy I know who's also like a staunch like, no, it's a Switch 1 game. But
We'll
anyways,
see. We'll see. So one game that was announced that I'm super excited for that has been really quiet for a long time is this indie game called Witchbrook, which is basically the non-transphobic Harry Potter game, which is really cool. Um, and it looks really cool. It looks really vast. It really looks like, hey, you are a student at this school. You're going to take classes. You're going to have relationships with different students. Um, I'm really excited about it. It looks gorgeous visually. Um, were you aware of Witchbrook before it was announced? And like, what are your thoughts on what you saw?
vaguely, I mostly knew of it just because I remember when it was like first announced. It's been a while, right? Like I feel like we learned about this game ages ago. I knew it was Chucklefish, and I remember we got like we had some screen caps before, but we've never seen actual full gameplay like this until now, right?
Yes, this is the first time we've seen anything. And for those that don't know, Chucklefish is the developer of Crosscode, which is a pretty beloved indie uh, RPG that I've personally been wanting to get to for a while. But also, like, apparently it's super long, and it's like I don't have the time for it right now.
Well, so they published Crosscode. Their
Oh, okay, they
own,
published
yeah,
it.
yeah, their own developed stuff. I think is just Starbound and the Wargroove games. They're
Oh,
one of those
okay,
indie
okay.
teams where they publish a lot of other indie studios. They get a lot of like other. They help support other smaller creators like release things. Um, I think they did like the early release of Stardew Valley before it ended up being self-published later. Um, but yeah, so they are involved in a couple other companies. But as far as like their own stuff goes, it's we really just had I think Wargroove and Starbound. So it's like cool that there's like this very different genre on its way from them.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I don't believe we got any sort of release date for it yet, but it looks very cool. And thank you for correcting me about the Chucklefish stuff.
Yeah, you're good.
But yeah, cool stuff. And the next game that we're going to talk about is Gradius Origins. Don't want to like go too deep on this, but Gradius is a really beloved like arcade shooter, like space shooter.
A shmup,
Um
a shoot 'em up.
yeah. Yeah, shoot 'em up. And they're doing this collection of a bunch of different games, Gradius and Salamander games, and also included with it is a brand new Salamander game too. So I just thought for those of that genre that care about that, I think Gradius just has a notable enough history in games that like, hey, this is something that people should know about. Next up is Rift of the Necrodancer. Kevin, you particularly wanted to talk about this game. It was out on Steam for a while, but it's finally coming to Switch. And yeah, share us your thoughts.
Yeah, so I haven't checked it out yet on Steam because I was waiting for the Switch version personally. I really liked Crypt of the Necrodancer. I liked Cadence of Hyrule, and so them doing a different, slightly more traditional rhythm style game because it doesn't have all the dungeon delving and timing attacks and everything with enemies. It's a little more focused on traditional rhythm focus. It's just cool that we finally are getting it on Switch because the thing is this is one of those games where like we heard about it years ago. It's been at multiple directs and like they were kind of just quiet. They kind of hit a point where it was just like it's coming out. Like we're working on it. Like not quite like obviously not as bad as like the vaporware potential Silksong situation, but it was that kind of like, hey, what's happening with this now? And so when it came to Steam, it was like, oh, awesome, it's out, but it's only on Steam. What's going on with Steam, what's going on with Switch? And so today, not only did they confirm Switch finally, but they shadow dropped it. So that's super awesome. Along with some DLC, they announced DLC for it, Celeste, which I think is available right now as well, and that came to Steam on the same day. And then it's not out yet, but they also confirmed they're going to do Pizza Tower as DLC. So I'm very curious personally if because of this dev, the main reason I want to talk about this one is because of this dev's history of working with Nintendo and leveraging the Zelda IP. I'm kind of surprised. Like when we didn't know it was on Switch yet, I was thinking, oh, well, it's delayed on Switch because we're going to get like a Zelda song pack and it's going to be Switch exclusive. Like that's why. Like they're waiting because they're getting that done, and that's not what happened yet. But I'm not. I'm holding out hope. I'm feeling that there might be a chance of some Nintendo IP stuff making their way to the Switch version specifically.
When they showed this trailer, I was waiting for it. I was like, show us the Nintendo music, show us the Nintendo pack, and I was surprised too. But they're also doing like these. I love when these like notable indies like collaborate with each other, kind of like what Indivisible was going to do
Yeah.
before everything that happened with that game. And one of other indies that seemingly they're doing a DLC for that they showed in the trailer briefly is Super Meat Boy.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so that's cool too. But yeah, I played this game a few times before it finally came out. It did have a pretty like lengthy public facing development, but it's it's cool that it's out now, especially on Switch. And I love music games, like I love Rock Band, and I really enjoyed my time playing this game. um I don't know if I see myself playing it a whole lot just because, as you get older, you have less time to do shit. But I'm
And you're
really
worse
glad
at
that this
timing.
yeah, I love this this team. Brace Yourself Games is an incredible team, and I wish them nothing but success. Next is oh yeah, so did you want to talk about Tomogachi Plaza?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Then
Although
that
I will
was
say, not about the game, but this was a Legends of Arceus situation where they said Tamagotchi, and I went, "Holy shit! I've been saying it wrong my entire life."
yeah, it's too bad. Tomogachi. So too bad.
Yeah, no,
Uh
yeah, like me and every other kid growing up, where we only had like the packaging to go off of. A lot of people Americanized it saying "gotchi" because got GOT,
yeah.
but it 100% makes sense that it's Tamago because it's egg. But like, it just yeah, hearing it pronounced, I went, "Oh God, my life is a lie. I've been saying it wrong for 26 years or however long I've been aware of its existence."
Yeah, and like Tamagotchis have gotten like a kind of like a
And you just did it.
resurgence, I feel like. What?
You just said the wrong way too.
Yeah, no, I say it the wrong way, and I'm gonna keep saying it the wrong way. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I'm gonna say
We relented on
Tamagotchi.
Arceus. We're not going to give it to Tamago.
Uh, I mean, like, I still say Arceus. Like, I don't know. Like, I, 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 I'm, I'm still distraught about it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like again, some of Trail's characters that I pronounced their names certain ways until they were finally localized, and I heard them like characters say it, and it wasn't the way I said it, and I'm like, nah, that's
Yeah.
wrong. Like, but anyway, uh, we're not talking about Tamagotchi Plaza because we don't care about that game. I accidentally added it into the notes, and apparently I thought that was Kevin, but apparently that was me. So sorry, y'all. But there's a new Tamagotchi Plaza game coming out for those that sickos that care about that.
It does look cute.
Um, Next up, which probably very unexpected, Pokemon Legends ZA.
Yeah.
Normally, we don't get Pokemon stuff during directs. It's normally during a Pokemon Presents. And we got a new trailer. We got some new details about kind of like the gameplay cycle of things and how you like can go to these zones uh during the day, and you can run into trainers that will like challenge you like while you're trying to do your own thing, and then there's like this ZA Royale where it's basically like you start at rank Z and then you can battle people. You can even like stealth approach people, which is crazy,
No, it's
and just
it's
attack
hilarious.
people.
Yeah, because like the whole pitch is that during the day, the wild zones are like, oh, you catch Pokemon, it's nice stuff. And then when night falls, suddenly it's Pokemon street brawls happening where everyone's having a tournament
Yeah,
arc trying to claim the ranks. And yeah, you can sneak attack people. Like your Pokemon's out with you. You can see some guy with his back turned with his Pokemon out and just be like, hey, punch that Pokemon in the back of the head. Like, do it. Like,
yeah, couldn't be me. I will never do that. No, I'm gonna be respectful and be like, yo, I want to challenge you. Let's fight. But it's cool because you can like when you go up to them, you can see what their rank is. So like you kind of get a sense of like how good or how weak they are. And I'm curious as to see like how that plays into the narrative as well. But yeah, it Pokemon Legends continues to look really cool as someone who's kind of been uh unimpressed with Pokemon for a while now. So probably the most unexpected announcement for this direct.
one of the two
Um,
big returns.
we are getting a new Rhythm Heaven game called Rhythm Heaven Groove. Um, and I'm not a Rhythm Heaven guy. I never played them back on the. I started on the D. It was like basically a DS series, right? And then it had like one game on the 3DS.
There were a couple. I think there was a Wii one as well. Like that was like a digital
Okay.
only or something. They've had a couple. But I think at least in the US, like the DS game Rhythm Heaven is that's like what most people point back to and like recall
Hmm.
as being the big one. So a wild thing about this, and I really need to take better notes when I see random information on social media because I feel like this is the third time I've said I forget who said this. I need to like go like, oh, this guy said this, so I could because I didn't know this, but so I knew it's been a while since the series has been around. Like we haven't had a proper new one in a decade, and I think even the last one we had was like a best
Wasn't
of kind of
what?
collection,
Yeah.
and so it wasn't like a real new one yet. Um, so the reason for that is because the uh, main composer involved, Sunku, who's also the producer, like this is his game effectively, like it's what he's a part of. Um, I'm not going to pronounce this right, or at least the condition properly, but he had cancer of the larynx and he had his vocal cords removed, which that's kind of an important part of the creation process. And so I for a long time people have kind of been like, is he still doing stuff? Like is this ever going to happen again? Because his circumstances have changed, and here we are, a brand new one revealed out of the blue.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's. I know a very small number of people that absolutely lost their minds over this announcement, and I'm super happy for them. Super happy that they like that their dreams are coming true.
Yeah, no, like
Um,
I've joked a lot that this morning's direct is like a great litmus test for like if you're like a sicko for weirder Nintendo, like you want Nintendo's weirder shit, because I've seen some people just hate on this morning's direct, which I don't agree with, but I kind of get where they're coming from. Like if all you ever want is like the big name like stuff, sure, fine, whatever. And then there's other people where they're like, oh yeah, there are a few games that I'm excited by. And then there's a segment of people I follow and friends that I have that are just ravenous about this coming back, and then the other game we're going to talk about later. Uh, just like cannot believe that both these titles are coming back, and it's such a very specific, weird form of Nintendo game.
yeah, no, it is. It's very very niche. Like it makes Fire Emblem look mainstream in a way that in a way so it's exciting for those that care. I don't like as someone who does not care about Rhythm Heaven. I did not think that was a bad announcement. Like I was like, this
Oh
is
god,
dope.
yeah.
Like I'm super happy for like these people, and that's like the thing that I think that people need to learn to kind of separate from. It's just like, yo, this is not for me, but I know so many people that are like super happy about this particular announcement,
Yeah,
and I think that's significant. Um,
absolutely.
the next thing was Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. We got a release date for May 21st. And just as a reminder, that is also coming out on the PS5. So if you wanted to play a new Fantasy Life, but you don't want to play it on the Switch for some reason, it's going to be on PS5. So good stuff there. The next thing, this is the thing I wanted to talk to you about, Kevin.
I feel like I know what you're going to ask me, but
When they showed the sword, I was just like, this is either Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics. I was thinking one of those two things.
I didn't
please.
I didn't think Tactics. I 100% had that brief moment though of being like, oh, they're finally revealing FE4 remake. Like that's what's finally happening here. Because especially like it was the sword, it was the art style, which looked a little similar to what we were kind of seeing for Shadows of Valentia, where it's that kind of slightly more realistic art approach. Not quite like it is anime, but it's a little more older style, I would say. And like the accompanying quote was something like revisit history or something like that. So it was like, oh shit, it's finally happening. And then still cool news, still a game I'm excited about, but it's Saga Frontier 2 remastered. And like, that was there's been a couple times we've had fake outs like that. It's like when we were talking about what was it, the DLC for King of Fighters coming to Street Fighter, and we were like, oh, are they announcing like a new KOF X Street Fighter? It's like, no, that's not. It's never mind. It's DLC characters. Okay, neat.
Oh yeah, that's when we thought it was like SNK, Capcom versus SNK. Yeah. No, because like when I saw the sword, I literally like held my breath. I was like, and then it was just Saga Frontier 2. I'm like, oh, like I mean, so I haven't played that game, but from what I've heard from the Saga sickos, that is the best Saga game. And so
yeah.
Do you disagree with that?
I don't know if I've heard that as the best one. It's certainly one that like is loved a lot. I always hear a little more praise for the first one.
Interesting. Okay.
But like 2 is definitely, and like aesthetically super freaking cool. Like it has this
it's beautiful game,
watercolor style approach that they've adapted to higher resolution. Beautiful looking. This is one that I have personally missed out on. I think I do have a PS1 copy sitting on a shelf that I just have not gotten around to booting up. So, this might be my chance to dive in. I don't think it has a physical for this one. We haven't seen word of that anywhere as far as I've been able to tell.
All of the Saga remasters have gotten physicals through PlayAsia. And so...
Yeah.
Well... Yeah, yes. I'm just gonna say yes for the sake of I don't know for certain, but yes, like because I have Romancing Saga 2, 3, Scarlet Grace, Frontier remastered, and then whatever the remaster or of Saga 1 is called. I forgot what it's called, but
I forget for Saga 1 because there's the one from last year that was Romancing Saga 2. And that one I think was just a wide release. I don't think that one was.
That was a remake. The remake, yes, but the remaster of the original has a physical release.
Yes.
So yeah, there's that. All of the re-releases that they have done on the Switch have physical releases. So I would expect the same for this one. You just have to go to PlayAsia basically to get those. Which that's fine.
Yeah, which if that is the case, they haven't announced it yet. It is the only.
No,
which I'm not saying that doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but just something to be aware of because it did shadow drop, which is also part of the cool thing. Like you can go buy and play this right now, and it is multiplat. It's not just Switch. Yeah, if you're a physical person, you may want to wait just a little bit to see if we get confirmation from anyone because right now, at least, it does look like it is just the digital, but that doesn't mean never. There's been a few cases where a digital game drops, especially when it's a shadow drop, and then it's like 3-4 weeks later, PlayAsia or Limited Run is like, oh, by the way, we're making a physical for this.
Yeah, just keep an eye out on PlayAsia. Like if you are a physical collector of JRPGs, or you're trying to get into it, PlayAsia is like a necessity site to keep an eye on because that is where certain games that may not get a physical release everywhere, it like will get one exclusively through PlayAsia. And the first game, the first Romancing Saga, Minstrel Song, that's what it's called.
Yes, Minstrel Song, that's right.
Yeah. That's where they get that's where those like happen. Like that's how you can get a physical copy of Baten Kaitos 1 and 2. You can get a physical copy of Ghost Trick which wasn't a JRPG, but like that was like how you were able to get a physical copy of Ghost Trick. The Etrian Odyssey Origins collection that came out a couple of years ago. Um, Yakuza, the man who erased his name. That's how you got a physical copy of that. So there's like a lot of different notable Japanese games that like you had to get a physical copy through PlayAsia.
Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes I think VGP will have listings for them too, because it's just Asia multi-language copies.
yeah, and like they get those copies from buying from PlayAsia.
Mm.
Kind of like with Limited Run. Like they
Yeah.
get games from Limited Run by just buying a bunch of stock from them. So yeah, Saga Frontier 2 remastered, that's cool. Saga's a series that I would very much like to get into down the along the way, but I got Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest to focus on first. We already talked about Everybody's Golf. Not a Japanese game, but we wanted to talk about it because it's really hype. Marvel Cosmic Invasion. So this is a new beat 'em up from the goats at Tribute, who worked on Scott Pilgrim, TMNT Shredder's Revenge that came out a few years ago. These guys are the like modern day goats when it comes to the beat 'em up genre, and they're making a Marvel game, and I cannot be more excited.
Yeah. I like Marvel. That's like a like I enjoy the occasional movie or whatever. I wouldn't really consider myself like a huge like Marvel superhero type person,
Sure.
but the fact alone that it's a new tribute and what's the publisher's name?
Dotemu.
Dotemu. Yeah. The fact that it's them working on this game and it's beat 'em up just immediately has me sold. Like the pedigree there with, like you said, staff that worked on Scott Pilgrim from back in the day. They did Shredder's Revenge more recently. Dotemu was involved with Streets of Rage 4. Like there is good bones here already for just a great beat 'em up action game. Did you see any of the like kind of press release stuff for this game afterwards? Because there's some stuff that was clarified about it. It's pretty neat.
I did not. No, please enlighten us.
So, as of right now, we know of 7 characters, which are the ones that were shown in the trailer. Their wording makes it a little unclear to me if that's going to be like strictly the launch roster or if they're going to have more to reveal. There's definitely going to be DLC. Like that has been the MO for these games. Like we're going to get DLC down the line that add more characters for sure. But at least for launch lineup, we know we're getting Captain America, Wolverine, Storm. I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but Phyla-Vell, Nova. Yeah, Philo is a weird like. There's a reason why they picked her, but it's kind of an outside choice. So the game is based on. I only know this because while I'm not really into Marvel, I had a stint where I was reading a lot of the comics related to specifically to Guardians of the Galaxy. It looks like the game is based on the Annihilation story arc, and she was a character involved fairly heavily in that story arc. But she's cool. She flies. She's got like an energy sword coming out of her hand. Good time. Who else? Spider-Man and Venom. But what's neat about this is not only is it like a cool lineup of characters, and we're probably going to get more, it's a tag team style game. So even when you're playing by yourself, you actually pick 2 characters and are able to swap between them in order to like do swap combos and stuff. So like, you might do like one kind of setup or something as Spider-Man and then tag another character in to do something else right after. Which like, look, I just love playable characters. I love variety and beat 'em ups like this. And so the option just have 2 characters right away that I'm playing as, like, yes, I'm down for it. Like, give me that.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm super excited. Tribute can do no wrong in my eyes. They've even released some like other games that aren't like in the same style, but like good action games like Panzer Paladin. If you haven't played that, really cool. And yeah, like and Dotemu is like also publishing the Ninja Gaiden game. The Ragebound, right, is what it's called. So
yes,
a lot of really good stuff in the works for sure. And then the last thing we wanted to talk about, which again, not for us, but we know that Kevin's wife Christine is super excited about. We got Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream.
Yes, this was the other like thing that people did not think was ever going to happen again. Like, this is another one where I think it's been like 10 years since the last game. It's another franchise that kind of like Rhythm Heaven, people just thought like they were done with it. Like Nintendo was just like, all right, like we're just not making these games anymore. And It's wild to me that this was like the closer. Like I respect the choice, but I would never have anticipated them being like, "Hey, final game of the show. Are you ready?" and just drop a brand new Tomodachi Life. Which again, like with Rhythm Heaven, I saw a lot of people who were just like, "What the hell is this? Why is this a closer? Why didn't they end on like Metroid? Why is this the closer?" And then I know other people who are just like, "Holy fucking shit, like it's happening." Like it's
This is the
really
greatest day of my life.
no, legit. Christine showed me a post. Like she was telling me about this just the other day, like a few days ago, where someone was like, "Look, I might be shooting myself in the foot here, but I'm gonna say it right now. Reply to this comment. If we actually get a brand new Tomodachi Life revealed, I'm buying everyone that replies a copy." And
That's
here we
amazing.
are.
That's amazing.
I actually I need to have her like tell me what account posted that so I can see like the follow up because just what?
Yeah, and to put it in perspective, we haven't gotten, at least the West hasn't gotten a Tomodachi game in 11 years at this point. It came out, there's only been one game to be clear, but it came out over a year earlier in Japan specifically. So, yeah, it's been a long wait for people. Again, not my thing whatsoever, but I'm super happy for it's always happy, like it's always a good feeling when you see people like freaking out about something that like you just like do you just do not know anything about. Like, hey, good for you, y'all. Like, love that for
Especially when
you.
it's something like this bonkers, right? Like you're like the trailer for this is so bizarre where it's just like you see a bunch of Miis hanging out, there's an old man breakdancing, one Mii has a dream where another Mii is like 50 feet tall with a deep voice, and they all have that I forget the term for it, but there's been a lot of misinfo lately where people will call this AI voice. It's not AI voice. It's just like they have a computer doing a voice. Like you're just manually typing what you want it to say. But it's that kind of very just like robotic tone uh, speaking that
Mm.
sounds so bizarre and just makes it even funnier to me.
And see, here's the thing, and I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer. But what I will say is that like I feel like what I will say about this generation of consoles for Nintendo is that I feel like a lot of the games that come back that people don't expect come back do not meet expectations. And that's the thing that like that's the one thing that I'm just like, ah man, like I hope this is good for those that care about it, but also like they don't have a really super great track record of doing that. And like granted, it's very there's only a handful of scenarios, right? Like Mario Strikers.
I knew
Everyone
you.
was super yeah, Mario dude, like everyone was just like, thank God it's here. And it just didn't really meet people's expectations.
Yeah,
And Tennis Aces as well.
yeah,
Arguably, for some people, new Pokemon Snap, like people were like super excited that Pokemon Snap was coming back. And I just feel like that game kind of came and went for a
yeah.
lot of people.
I haven't heard a lot of hate about it, but I think it was just sort of like, cool, we finally got it, and then they just everyone stopped talking about it. Like I feel like it very much just went silent very quickly. Um,
Yeah,
I feel like
that is a
Switch
game like
Sports had that reaction from some people too, like coming from like the Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort games. I just don't feel like I didn't see as much hype about Switch Sports. Like a lot of people bought it,
oh for sure.
but
Yeah.
I feel like I just
Yeah, a
didn't get a
lot
lot
of
of
again,
joy about it after.
we talked about that a few episodes ago where I was just like, I did not know that Nintendo Switch Sports sold like this. Like that's actually that's one of the few first party Nintendo games I still haven't purchased, but like I'm just like, damn, I did not know this sold like 10 plus million copies or something like that. That's crazy. Um but yeah, so I want I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I hope it meets y'all's expectations. I hope y'all are happy with it. But I just I just had to throw that out there. It's just like
I
I
mean,
I I just kind of
yeah,
felt like this, it's just like when I kind of stepped back and thought about it, I was like, wait a minute, like a lot of these type of announcements, those games didn't really meet people's expectations. So I'm curious and slash hopeful that this and like Rhythm Heaven kind of break that.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's just it's a good lesson in general to like control hype a bit. Like, be excited for stuff, like be like happy things are happening, but also like just be ready. Like don't, like hope for the best, prepare for the worst is like always the right motto. Like don't just buy into infinite hype and just be like there's no way this can fail. It's going to change my life. Cuz then there's cases where the game's even like still fine or good and people will just be like hate this thing because it's not whatever you've hyped up and built up. One thing worth mentioning, I forget if we brought it up for Rhythm Heaven. These are the two announcements that are also not this year. Both of them are
Yes.
2026 with no specific window given. I think it was kind of just like, look, these are still going to be for a regular Switch. We're not going to really talk about like we're just going to get these announcements out now. Like these are in development, they're coming out. They're not going to be this year, but like they're for regular Switch. Maybe there's a cross-gen version down the line or whatever, but like don't worry.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy a Switch 2 for this.
Yeah, those are definitely cross-gen titles. Like that would be crazy if either of those were not cross-gen titles.
Okay, we have to have a talk about this. You seem to have an assumption that like Nintendo loves doing cross-gen, like they're going to have a bunch of games come out on both systems. Like it's back compat. They can just play the game by buying the Switch version and put it in the Switch 2.
I get that. I totally get that. But I think that and also to be fair, this is like the first kind of this is kind of the first generation for Nintendo where they can really like utilize cross-gen in a much more major way, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's just like these games are like, especially when they're more niche titles. It's like I just can't. I think it's going to take a long time, regardless of how successful the Switch one is, to migrate that audience to the Switch 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that for the first like 1 or 2 years, for those games that aren't super super power heavy, tech heavy, whatever, they're going to be cross-gen titles. And so that's kind of where like whatever the next Zelda is, mainline Zelda, 100% exclusive.
Yeah.
But even with like Mario,
I guess where I come from on that is, in my mind, they just released it on Switch 1. Like it's already cross-gen in the sense of the system's going to be back compatible. Like I just don't see Nintendo doing multi-version, like system native versions outside of specific examples where it's really just like we need the Switch 2 power to really make this different.
That's I will totally give you that. Like instead of saying like, oh, it's cross-gen, it's like, oh, it will release on the Switch and it will be back gen, it'll be back compat. I can co-sign that too. Like that's fine. Again, it's just we haven't really seen this level of potential for cross-gen titles of Nintendo. Sure. So who knows? They could just be like, yeah, we're gonna do a Switch 2 version and we're gonna do a Switch 1 version. Because there's also like the kind of aspect of cross-gen titles for third-party games, right?
Yeah.
Where like I could totally see them being like, yeah, here's the Switch 2 version, and then here's the Switch version.
Oh yeah, no, third party totally. Like I have no hesitation on that belief. Like I'm sure lots of third parties are going to do cross-gen. It's just when it comes to Nintendo themselves is where I get like again, I'm in the corner being like, I don't think Metroid Prime 4 is cross-gen, but whatever. we will find out.
Yeah, I can see what you mean by that. It's just like you don't think you more so like it's not like you don't think it's cross-gen because of like platform or like sales or anything like that. It's more of just like I don't think Nintendo is going to put in the extra effort to like make a significantly notable different version for the Switch 2. Yeah. I can see where you're coming from with that. That gives me a little bit more perspective on the kind of your like
No, for sure. Again, like sure. I totally, I think a lot of stuff, it makes sense to just make a Switch 1 version because the 2 can run it as well. And maybe there's still benefits there. They can like have things like unlocking the frame rate for it or something. It's just a matter of like, is there going to be a game where you have both Switch 1 and Switch 2 branded cases and they are like noticeably different performance levels and that whole kind of thing. That's where I get a little more just like, I don't know. We'll see. Like, it makes sense for a lot of other companies. I just feel like Nintendo historically doesn't do that outside of like very specific circumstances, like wanting motion controls for Twilight Princess or, needing a launch game for Switch because they were abandoning the Wii U.
Yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from. I totally get that. But everybody, that is our thoughts on the Nintendo Direct. We will have an episode out next Thursday covering everything that is revealed at the Nintendo Switch 2 presentation. Any last thoughts before we get out of here, Kevin?
I'm excited for next week. Just yeah, I think this was a cool final send off for the Switch. A little focused on niche stuff, but that kind of makes my brain a little happier than just seeing like hype, like general hype stuff. So I think this was a cool send off for the Switch, and I'm very curious to see what next week's gonna look like.
Yeah, like ultimately, we both thought that this was a good direct. Not. I don't think it like blew us away in a major way, but we both liked it, and there were definitely those announcements for that specific groups of people that was really cool, and unexpected. So, uh, but that's everything this episode. We hope you all had a good time listening. Until next time, I'm Cameron. That's Kevin, and we'll catch you later.
Later.